It is Saturday morning and you are already awake before anyone told you to be. Not because of school, not because of anything you had to do, because of something you got to do. You pulled on whatever was closest. Jeans, a t-shirt, sneakers you tied in about 4 seconds, and you were out the door with a quarter in your pocket and maybe another one your mom pressed into your hand at the last second for popcorn. The sidewalk was still cool under your feet from the night before. The sun was not all the way up yet. And you were moving with a specific kind of purpose that only belongs to children on Saturday mornings, when something good is waiting. The theater was already alive when you got there. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. There were kids everywhere, not families, not couples on dates, not adults with their careful ticket purchasing and their assigned seats and their serious expressions, just kids. Dozens of them, sometimes hundreds, depending on the size of the theater and the size of the town, all descended on one building on one morning of the week to be completely, gloriously unsupervised for 2 or 3 hours in the dark. The lobby smelled like popcorn that had been popping since early morning and something else underneath it, a faint sweetness from the candy display. Red licorice ropes, and milk duds, and good and plenty in their pink and white boxes, and jujubes that would stick to your back teeth for the rest of the day, and junior mints that left a cold feeling on your tongue, and those wax bottles filled with colored sugar syrup that were more toy than candy. Their carpet was red, or burgundy, or a dark pattern that hid the stains, and it was sticky in places near the concession stand in a way that had probably been sticky for years, and would be sticky for years more. The ticket taker was a teenager, maybe 16, maybe 17, wearing a maroon vest that was slightly too big, tearing your ticket with the casual authority of someone who had done it 1,000 times that month. 25 cents. That was the price in the 1950s for a Saturday matinee admission. By the 1960s, it had crept up to 35 or 40 cents in some cities. By the 1970s, maybe 75 cents, $1 in bigger markets. But it was always within reach of what a kid could put together from chores, from the change jar on the kitchen counter, from the goodwill of a grandmother who believed Saturdays deserved small celebrations. The price was part of the ritual. You earned it, or you saved it, or someone believed in you enough to hand it over, and either way it meant something by the time it left your palm at the ticket window. Inside the auditorium, it was loud before anything even started. The noise of 200 kids in a dark space together is its own specific sound. Not chaos exactly, more like weather. A constant hum of movement and talking and laughing and the crinkle of candy wrappers being opened immediately despite every intention to save them and the occasional shriek from somewhere near the front where the youngest kids always sat and the shuffle of feet on sticky floors and the creak of seats being thrown back and climbed over. You found your friends if you had arranged to meet them, or you found a seat near people you vaguely knew from school or from your block, and you settled in with your popcorn balanced on your knees, and your candy tucked into your jacket pocket for the parts where you needed something to do with your hands. Then the lights went down, and the room changed, not all at once, gradually. The talking dropped to murmuring, dropped to near silence, dropped to nothing, and 200 kids who had been absolute chaos 30 seconds earlier were suddenly completely still. It happened every single week. The same transformation. Like someone had found a switch that only worked on children in darkened rooms on Saturday mornings. What followed was a program, and the word program is important because that is exactly what it was. Not just a movie. A curated experience built specifically for a Saturday morning crowd of children who had paid their quarter and expected their money's worth. Earned their money's worth. Who had gotten up before the rest of the house was moving to be there. It started with cartoons, always cartoons first. Looney Tunes shorts. Bugs Bunny outwitting Elmer Fudd in about 7 different directions. Daffy Duck losing his composure in increasingly spectacular ways. The Roadrunner doing the impossible and Wile E. Coyote doing the inevitable. Tom and Jerry, Woody Woodpecker, Popeye. 5 or 6 of them back to back, each one greeted with its own response from the crowd. Laughter at the right moments, groans when a character got flattened, that collective intake of breath right before a gag landed that you could actually feel in the air around you. Then a newsreel sometimes, though kids tolerated those more than loved them, the only quiet 5 minutes of the whole morning. Then a serial, a chapter of something ongoing, a cowboy adventure or a science fiction story or a masked hero story, each episode ending on a cliffhanger specifically designed to bring you back next Saturday. Buck Rogers stranded on an alien planet. Flash Gordon in the clutches of Ming the Merciless. Zorro cornered with no escape route visible. The Lone Ranger ambushed. The screen going dark at the worst possible moment with the word continued printed across it, and 200 kids making a noise that was half agony and half delight. You would talk about that cliffhanger for the entire following week. Then the feature. Usually a western or a comedy or an adventure picture, sometimes a double feature if the theater was feeling generous, 2 complete movies for the same quarter, 3 hours, sometimes nearly 4. All of it yours for less than the price of a candy bar a few decades later. There was a boy named Tommy Rizzo who grew up in South Philadelphia in the 1950s and went to the Saturday matinee at the Boyd Theater on Chestnut Street nearly every single week from age 7 to age 13. His family did not have much. His father worked at the shipyard. His mother took in sewing from neighbors and alterations from a dry cleaner 2 blocks over. The quarter for the matinee was not nothing in that house. It was discussed. It was earned. But his parents understood that Saturday morning at the movies was not a luxury in the way that luxuries get cut first. It was containment. It was community. It was 3 hours of the week when Tommy was somewhere safe and occupied and genuinely happy in the simple way that children are happy when something is exactly right for them. He said later in his life that the Boyd on Saturday mornings was the first place he ever felt like part of something bigger than his block. 200 kids all experiencing the same thing at the same time, laughing at the same moment, scared at the same moment, groaning at the same cliffhanger, cheering when the hero finally punched the villain hard enough to end it. He said it taught him something about what it meant to share an experience, to be in a room where everyone around you was feeling something close to what you were feeling, and that he spent a lot of his adult life looking for that feeling in other places and only sometimes finding it. The Saturday matinee was not babysitting dressed up as entertainment. It was not parents offloading children to a dark room for a few hours of quiet. It was a children's institution, a genuine one. The first public space that was designed specifically for kids and run on terms that kids could meet on their own. To understand where it came from, you have to go back to the very early years of cinema, to Nickelodeons and traveling picture shows in the chaotic early theater culture of American cities in the first decade of the 20th century. Movies were news and slightly disreputable and wildly popular among working-class audiences in ways that made the middle class nervous. Children went to movies alongside adults from the beginning, and reformers and educators spent considerable energy worrying about what children were watching and what it was doing to them. The Saturday matinee as a children's specific program took its clearest shape in the 1920s, when theater owners began recognizing that Saturday mornings were drawing disproportionate numbers of unaccompanied children and that serving them well was good business. The key insight, the one that changed everything, was not about the movies themselves. It was about the program. The experience from the moment a kid walked in to the moment they walked out had to be built for them, not adapted from something built for adults. Cartoons first, because they were short and immediately rewarding and set the right tone. Serials next, because serials created loyalty and brought kids back every single week without fail. The feature last, as the payoff for sitting through everything that came before. And all of it priced within reach of what a child could independently manage. The surprising thing about the Saturday matinee is that it was never a formal industry program. No single studio created it. No national chain mandated it. It grew organically from thousands of individual theater owners making the same discovery independently, that children were a reliable weekly audience if you gave them something worth showing up for, on terms they could meet, in a space that felt like it belonged to them. By the late 1940s, Saturday morning at the movies was one of the most consistent rituals in American childhood. It crossed regional lines and income lines and racial lines in ways that most American institutions did not. The Boyd Theater in South Philadelphia, the Roxy in Harlem, the Paramount in small towns across the Midwest where the Saturday matinee was the only movie programming of the week. The Granada in Los Angeles, where kids came from neighborhoods across the city because the program was that good. 40% of American children attended at least once a month. In dense urban neighborhoods, the number was higher. In some neighborhoods, it was close to every child, every week, as reliably as church. The first signs of its ending were easy to misread as temporary. Television arrived in American homes in the late 1940s and spread with a speed that surprised nearly everyone. By 1955, roughly half of American homes had a television set. By 1960, 90%. And Saturday morning television programming developed quickly and directly in competition with Saturday morning at the theater. Cartoons on television, cowboy serials on television. Adventure programs built on the same rhythms that the matinee had spent 30 years perfecting. You could watch at home. You did not need a quarter. You did not need shoes. Theater owners responded the way businesses respond to competition. They adjusted prices, improved the candy selection, extended the programs, added more cartoons. Some of them began booking more current features for the Saturday slot, reasoning that newer movies would draw kids away from the television. All of it was reasonable. None of it addressed the actual problem. Here is the rehook. Here is the part most people get wrong when they explain what happened to the Saturday matinee. Television did not kill it by being better. Television killed it by being there. The content was similar enough. The cartoons were equivalent. The adventure stories translated. But the living room is not the theater, and it never was. And the thing that made the Saturday matinee irreplaceable was not the cartoons or the serials or even the movies. It was the room. It was being in that specific room, with that specific crowd, going through that experience together at the same time. 200 kids laughing in the dark is not the same as one kid laughing at the television in the living room. It is a categorically different experience. The matinee was collective, television was individual. And once the content was equivalent, the collective experience was the only argument left for getting dressed on Saturday morning and walking to the theater with a quarter. And slowly, year by year through the 1960s, that argument lost. Not all at once. The decline was gradual enough that for years it felt like a rough patch rather than a permanent change. Attendance dropped, but the shows continued. The serials became harder to sustain financially and began disappearing from the program through the early 1960s. The carefully structured program, cartoons, newsreel, serial, feature, started collapsing into just a feature and some shorts, then just a feature. The ritual shrank. The event became a showing. By the late 1960s, most urban theaters had quietly retired the Saturday children's matinee as a distinct program. The last serious attempts came in the early 1970s when some theaters rebranded their Saturday mornings as family events, programming Disney releases and G-rated pictures for parents and children together. It drew audiences sometimes, but it was a different thing entirely. The parents were there now. The space no longer belonged to the kids. The unsupervised electricity was gone. That specific wildness of a room full of children with nobody managing them. The noise before the lights went down. The freedom of being somewhere that was yours, in a way that no other public place ever quite was. The Saturday matinee as an institution was finished by 1980. The word outlasted the thing. Theaters still used matinee to describe afternoon showings, and still do. But the program was gone. The serials were gone. The cliffhangers were gone. The 25-cent admission and the sticky carpet and the maroon vest and the woman at the concession stand who had seen your face every Saturday for 3 years and already knew you wanted the milk duds. All of it gone. What replaced it was television and then home video and then streaming, each one more convenient and more individual than the last. Better content in many ways. Worse experience in every way that mattered to Tommy Rizzo walking to the Boyd on a Saturday morning with a quarter in his hand and 2 hours of freedom ahead of him. You remember the darkness before the cartoon started. You remember the sound of 200 kids going quiet all at the same moment. That sudden hush that felt almost sacred. You remember the serial ending at the worst possible moment and the collective groan rising from every seat in the house. You remember the sticky carpet and the popcorn smell and the candy you rationed carefully and always ran out of anyway. You remember the walk home afterward with the story still moving through you, the best moments replaying without effort, already knowing you would be back next Saturday. You remember what it felt like to be in a room where everyone around you was completely, entirely, unguardedly present. Here is the question I keep coming back to. When did you last feel that specific thing? That feeling of being part of a crowd of kids experiencing something together, without adults directing it, without a schedule telling you when to feel what? Not a field trip. Not a birthday party with a plan. Just a room full of children and something on the screen and that particular electricity that only comes from sharing something in the dark with people exactly your own age. Do kids today have anything that comes close? And when did you first realize the Saturday matinee was gone? Not closed, not canceled, but simply no longer something the world made room for. Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know where you are watching from and what you remember.